All right, so yeah, I spoke at BAFCA a few years ago. It was really an awesome experience for me. It was only the second time I presented in person because I kind of really started this receiver academy during COVID, so everything was virtual. So I really was grateful for that opportunity. I had a great time and met a lot of coaches that I'm still in touch with today, and that I plan to be in touch with for as long as I'm doing this. They're great people, and I was able to learn from them as much as hopefully they were able to learn from me. Just a little bit about myself. I'm from Long Island, New York. I played high school ball here. I played small Division III ball in New Jersey. And then I was fortunate enough to play professionally for the Guelph Firenze from 2017 to 2019. As a coach, I coached at my alma mater to start. And then I was able to spend 2019 in Florence coaching. I spent a little bit of time at the Division II NCAA level. And now I'm currently a high school coach at Oceanside High School on Long Island. And I operate the Long Island Wide Receiver Academy as my full-time job, which I'm very, very, very grateful for. So just some things that we're going to be going over today. We covered the intro already. Just drill philosophy, why we do the drills we do, how we kind of go about our process in selecting drills and constructing drills. Hard breaks, what they are, what we do, how we apply them. Pressure step speed cut, which we kind of teach very similarly. And then
Excuse me, sorry, coach. Excuse me, guys. Can you see the presentation? Because I've had a message from one coach saying he cannot.
No
Right,
problem.
coach. They're not seeing the
okay,
presentation.
then I'll share the screen and it'll be a little bit laggy. It's okay.
Rick, if we go to gallery view, you can just log on pinned from that.
It is pinned. I don't know. All right, I'll just share the screen. It'll be a lot easier. It'll just be a little laggy, but it's okay.
Thank you, coach.
No problem. Cool. Got it now?
That's great, coach.
Yep. All right, so drill philosophy. Really smart track coach, Canadian track coach, trained Ben Johnson, a bunch of other Olympians. Had an awesome saying, watch the players, not the game. You want to get better at a task, watch how people execute it. So what we look for, movement patterns, how guys are moving, commonalities between the elite guys, right? There are some unicorns out there that are able to do things specific to them. We want to find commonalities in movements, commonalities in body positions, different joint angles and different break points, different releases and things like that. And then kind of reverse engineer that and find ways that we can get our drills to get us in those positions. And eventually it's imperative that we progress to running full speed routes, right? The game isn't played in drills, and then eventually responding to a stimulus, because the game is all about responding to stimuli. How do we provide a stimulus? We do one-on-ones, we do 7-on-7, and we do team. There are some ways that you can do like a little bit like of an ecological approach where you can have guys having a stimulus to respond to in indie drills, but indie time is very limited. So it's very difficult. And in a practice structure, you're usually getting 1, 2, or 3 of these where you're able to exhibit that. So what is a hard break? Hard break is terminology that we like to use. It's any break point that requires that rapid drop of your hips, that rapid change in body position, and a redirection at a depth greater than 8 to 10 yards. We use the 8 to 10 yard mark. It's just a ballpark number because you're typically at a higher velocity there, where you're going to need a little bit more force on the ground, a little bit more of a change in body position to get in and out of breaks. If I'm running a 6-yard in route or an 8-yard stop route, I don't need to drop as much as I would need to on a 16-yard curl, because I am at a significantly higher velocity at 16 yards than I am at 7. Okay, I've had more time to accelerate. I'm going to need more force in the ground, different body position for those 2 break points. So upper body mechanics, hips have to change levels. This is not a one size fits all. Different body, different anthropometrics and body types will find different positions, but it's non-negotiable that the hips do have to change levels. Some guys will fold up like a lawn chair. Some guys will dip their hips, like Mike Evans, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're more hip dippers. Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, they fold up like lawn chairs, right? One is not necessarily better than others. Okay, everybody's got a different body type. Your femur length, your torso length, they're going to dictate that. The chest will follow. I don't like saying hips down, chest over as much. I will say it. I try to be cognizant of it because with the younger guys, we don't want them dumping that chest forward. Okay. The chest should come down, not forward. Okay. When we dump the chest forward, well, let's backtrack a little bit. Anytime we're working a hard break, we're either breaking flat out at 90, whether it's a square in or square out, or we're coming back downhill. Okay. That means if I'm dumping my chest forward, I'm adding momentum away from where my reception area is. So we want to avoid that as best we can. We want to think down, not forward. And then we want our arms coming down tight to our body as well. Okay. It's completely counterproductive to have anything going up while the goal is to bring my hips down, right? So everything should be moving together. Arms are down tight. We like to tell guys, if you're running down a really narrow hallway, your elbow should never touch the walls, right? When I start to sink my hips, I should be able to just drop straight down. Lower body mechanics, whole-footed ground contacts. I can absorb force better on a larger surface area, right? So off our toes, I'm not going to heel strike either, intentionally heel strike either. Every spike on the bottom of your cleat should be in the ground, that ground contact. In the break, we'll never pitter-patter in place. Each step is always gaining ground. The stride will inevitably condense and shorten once we drop our hips, but we're still gaining ground. And the break point is very, very rhythmic, which we'll talk about in further depth. Rotation. I'll touch these bullet points. We're going to dive into it a lot deeper when the film is on. It'll be a lot easier for you guys to understand why we teach it this way. Once we sink our hips, we're looking to turn our body into the direction that we're going to break to. If I'm facing forward and I'm trying to break back downhill at a 45, which is really a 135, it's going to take me a lot longer to get there. Or I'm going to push out like a deep out when I'm trying to run a comeback because my hips are not really in a body position where they'll be able to drive downhill. And then most common routes here are curl comeback, vertical curl, hinge, dig, square out, things like that. So just some examples of what we refer to as a hard break. Sudden drop of your hips, whole foot is in the ground, vertical until it's not. Really nice job here. You'll notice this is Jerry. Vertical, vertical, down. Arms are coming down tight by the body. Body starts to rotate. He's hinging or falling out. He's now in a better position to fall out of that break point. And then this is one of the, I'll always try to get you guys film of guys we work with as well. Anybody can stand up here and show you Jerry Rice and Julio Jones. So I try to show you guys some normal human beings as well. So this is one of the guys we work with running a hinge. Sudden drop, hips down, chest over. So he dumps his chest a little bit forward, but he's kind of a freaky athlete. He's able to get away with it a bit. It's something we've been working on a ton. He folds up, right? His hips drop, folds up very, very well. So just the drill bank of the hard breaks, okay? So we have short drops and variations of it. Some of this stuff's going to be a little bit similar to the BAFCA presentation, but there are some differences. We have our trigger series, our red light, green light series, and then how we teach the top of the route. So the first thing is short drops. This is legitimately every single day. So right out of our dynamic warm-up, we're doing short drops. One variation of them at least. No matter what the group is. This is where the guys are going to feel their breakpoint position. So they're introduced to hips down, chest over, arms tight, whole foot in the ground. It's only 2 ground contacts, and we want independent feet. What we mean by that is we don't want people hopping into this. The feet should strike at 2 different times. So if we're going right, left cadence, it should be right and then left, not right and left striking at the same time. We're trying to snap our hips down as sudden and violent as possible. This is not a squat. We're trying to flinch down. And we like to tell guys to hold the body position for a period of time, just so they're able to realize it and kind of feel what that break point should feel like. The variations, which we'll take a look at, top of the 45 exit, top 90 exit, and long drop. So this is just the base short drop drill, okay? We were a little nonchalant about coaching the arms at first in this. We want some type of arm action. I like to tell guys elbow clear spine, because one of the biggest issues in hard breaks is that prior to their break point, their arm action will change, right? If my arm action range of motion changes 2 strides before I sink my hips, I'm basically giving the DB a head start to the break point. the better the DB, the more likely they're going to drive that indicator. But we want to limit every indicator possible. So we don't want anything to change prior to the hip dropping. If we do our job as a route runner, the hip drop should initiate the break point. So upright rhythmic, whole foot in the ground, hold. Whole foot. Chest over, arms tight, whole foot's in the ground. As sudden as you can get your hips down. So this is our base short drop. They'll exit out to a catch. And the whole time they're doing this, we're just consistently reminding them that this is your breakpoint position, right? Like the same body position you're in here. The goal is to find that in all our hard breaks. So here would be the top 45 variation. So the first one, we're just hitting our 3 short drops. We're kind of cruising out for a catch point. Same setup, but now on the last one, instead of straight down, we're going to slightly rotate the body so we can drive down our hallway. Okay. Whole foot still on the ground. Hips are still down. Chest is still over. Arms are still tight. Nothing changes other than the position that our body's facing. And the reason we teach this is super important. It's made a huge difference for our guys. If this is Nolan. Nolan was trying to run this way. Okay? If he tries to run that way, facing forwards, it's going to take him significantly longer to get there than if he were to start already turned. The race starts between the DB and the wideout. We said prior, if we do our job, once the hips drop. So now the question becomes, once I drop my hips, what's the fastest way to get here? It is not to continue facing this way. Okay, so we want to slightly rotate our body into the direction of the reception area. So I'm in a position to run through that break. Hold the body position, whole foot in the ground, rotate drive. And then just some of our guys in motion. Enters the break square. Rotate the body in a direction that I can run downhill. And then the final variation would be adding a long drop to it and then a top of a 45. This is really good if you're trying to save time. You don't have time to separate all the drills. In the private sector, we have basically 90 minutes of indie. So we can do short drops, top a route. We could do all those things. This is a great way to combine everything in one. It'll take you about 8 minutes to get guys 3 reps if you set up multiple lines. So when we get we call this a long drop. When I get the long drop, we're looking to find the same body position that I found on my short drops, but on the move. You'll notice each step gains ground. Every spike is in the ground. Trigger, rotate, drive. I'm in a position to drive downhill. Oftentimes, you'll see guys try to break out of their 45s facing forward, and their comebacks are really deep outs that end up rounding down, or their curls are really digs that end up rounding down. Okay, we want to get our hips, shoulders, feet rotated into the direction that we want to exit. This tanked L. Vertical, vertical, vertical. Drop. Body starts to rotate. He's in a position to drive down. Drop, rotate, drive. So next drill series will work. It's a trigger series. This is like super day one. This is day one stuff, right? So we don't even have newer footage of the first two variations here because we've kind of phased out of it. We really only do it with newer athletes. So I don't have a ton of new film of it because I'm usually like really locked into coaching the kids because it's brand new for them. So trigger step is just the strider step, which initiates our break point. It's our main decelerator. It's going to take us from our vertical stem to our break point. It's the first step where we're dropping our hips. The trigger series is super rhythmic, similar to the short drops in how we approach the drill. Force is being applied straight down into the ground, whole footed ground contact. You're going to hear all these same coaching points because they're applicable to anything that requires a hard break. All the spikes on the ground. Here we're talking about the foot is going to bring the hip down. The hip is going to bring the chest down. The arms are going to stay tight. This is a great time where guys can really feel that hip position, feel their feet in the ground. The three variations are the trigger step, the trigger one, and the trigger with rotation. So here's just the first variation. Upright, let the foot bring the hip brings the chest, arm stays tight. Very low level. Second variation would just be adding the second step. So you'll know that this is a good drill for guys because oftentimes when people will first start to do this, they'll strike their feet in the ground right in place, right next to each other. There's not a hard break that I've ever watched where somebody just triggers and the rest of their steps are in place. Every step in the break point is going to gain a little bit of ground. Whole foot is in the ground, foot brings the hip brings the chest. Hold the body position. And then just a clip of reinforcing why we teach that rotation. All right, before we get to the rotation part of the trigger series. So here's Devontae working a curl, more like a stop. He doesn't run through the ball much. Vertical, down. Okay, enters the break square. We don't want to enter the break turn because that could be an indicator for the DB. We want to enter it square as best as possible. Once the hips drop, it is now a race to the reception. Period. End of story. Is in simplest terms, what is the fastest way to get to my reception area? Drop, rotate. Gunther Brewer, the wideout coach at Maryland now, formerly at Louisville with the Eagles, he calls this this bone the ankle eye. Okay, this is the medial malleolus, the inside ankle bone of your ankle. Wherever this is facing, he says is where you're going to drive to. Okay, but we don't want to just turn the ankle. I want my hip and I want my shoulder turned there as well, because now I'm in a position to race away from my DB through the reception. So let it play one more time. So we'll drill that in the same series that we do the trigger and the trigger one. We phased out with most of our guys that we've worked with that have been with us for a period of time. And we'll kind of just start with this one here. So the first step should look exactly the same. We're just going to slightly turn our body on 2 and 3. Whole foot stays in the ground. Body position doesn't change. Something we want to be cognizant of. Wherever my body position is at on 1, it's going to stay for 2 and 3. I don't want my hips getting lower in the break. I don't want to lift in the break. Okay, we call it marrying the break. Whatever body position I enter the break point at, I want to exit at. Now, obviously, there's leeway there, right? Like if you pop up a tiny bit, that's fine, but we don't want to be upright trying to run out of the break point. The objective here is to run here, right? If I'm running a curl, the objective is to run here. If I'm running a comeback, the objective is to run here. If I'm standing up, I'm not running there. Okay, so we want to enter and exit at the same height. We refer to it as marrying the break. So we'll hit 1 and hold it. Hit it and hold it. And now we'll add a break point here. So this is a 90. So now we'll exit at like a dig. And then we'll just change the angle of departure. We'll change the break point. So now this is going to be a 45. So I really like this drill because it helps guys feel the rhythm of the feet and the break point, where they should strike in relation to one another, how they should strike in the ground, how much time they should be in the ground, things like that. Because a lot of times when you just have a kid run full speed, it gets really messy. It gets very, very pitter-pattery. It's very rhythmic. Route running is very rhythmic. When you listen to these guys that have done this for a period of time, run routes on air, the time between each if you shut your eyes, the time between each ground contact is relatively the same because it's a rehearsed drill. ROA is rehearsed. When you add a cover defender and you add a stimulus, there might be some things that change because you're responding to something. But this part is very, very rhythmic. So come back from chase. Vertical, 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 down, enters the break square, okay? His reception area is down here. If he tries to break down here facing this way, this more than likely is going to become a square out. Starts to rotate, body position turned, in a position to drive downhill. Come back for one of the guys we work with. So Cole's a little bit of an arrogant route runner. Okay, he's very, very good. He gets a little arrogant. You'll see what I mean at the break point, but he does a very good job dropping and rotating. Vertical, 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 trigger, okay? Rotate. Early eyes for me, I'm not a fan of because you notice he lifts, right? He's going to lift up. When you try and find the ball before you finish your break, your torso is naturally going to rise. You're going to lose speed on the exit. With that being said, really, really good job attacking, dropping, and rotating because now he's in a much better position to run down. If we are turned, okay, this is a great picture actually. Right now, Cole is facing this way. The DB is facing that way. If they were racing down the 15-yard line, he should never, ever lose. Ever. Because his body is already halfway rotated to the direction he needs to run. The DB is facing completely forward. So he has to rotate all the way down to get downhill. Similarly to him having to rotate all the way here to get down to the comeback. While Cole is already rotated in the direction he wants to exit. So red light, green light, another hard break drill. Like to tell guys, you're running the break point without the exit. So you're trying to find the same body position that you're going to find in any hard break. You'll get a go call. We're super aggressive. It's basically our vertical stem. We're attacking. You get a drop call. You're sinking your hips. You're in the break point. This is a difficult drill for guys because you have to be very, very aggressive in your stem, very, very relaxed in your break. Okay? We're not worried about the number of steps. We're not worried about what foot they're dropping on. We're worried about the body position. We need them to find a comfortable body position. Same thing, marry the break. Body position, whole foot in the ground, forceful ground contacts. Two variations. We have the regular red light, green light. We have an in-stem variation, which we'll talk about. We have a wrong shoulder variation, which we'll talk about. So this is regular red light, green light. You can change wherever the ball comes from as well. We had a quarterback today, so we went over the shoulder. Vertical, 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 down. Vertical. Ends up catching it over the shoulder. I advise everybody to do this down a line. Okay? Especially for the next variation we're going to talk about. They should realistically not come off the line is the goal here, especially when they're tracking. Vertical, 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 vertical. Down smooth. Hips are down, chest is over, arms are tight. No wasted movement. And these guys, he does a great job marrying the break, right? Like, we want guys to stay in it. We don't want 1-2, hop up and run again, because you'll never get out of a comeback like that. You will never get out of a comeback at 15, 16 yards in 2 steps. So we want to feel that break point. We want to feel the cadence. Cadence meaning the cadence of the feet in the break point. And these guys are all different skill levels. It's from Division I to Division III to high school. So the next variation becomes what we call it wrong shoulder. Okay. You definitely need a live arm for this. That's probably the only limiting factor on this, but you could also change where you're standing to make the throw a little bit easier. This for me is the number one tracking drill we've ever done. It's a little bit expensive, but you can change the tempo to dictate the intensity of the drill. So now they're going to run red light, green light, but now they're going to look over the opposite shoulder first. They're going to keep their chin on the collarbone until they get the ball call. When they get the ball call, the eyes should snap up, not back, to track the football. Because on anything vertical, realistically, the ball should be out by the time we're tracking it. So bad habit, looking back and then having to retrack it vertically. The other thing is, when guys tend to track the football, they'll peel off lines. Like he peels off a tiny bit. Ideally, we're going to stay on the line as we're changing where we're tracking from. So these are just two variations of red light, green light. We've got a few of them. There's one more that we'll discuss. And then just some guys pretty much running red light, green light in routes. Vertical, 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 drop. So the same thing here with Garrett Wilson. He's running a hinge at the top of your screen. Vertical, 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 drop. Another one of our guys. Vertical, 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 drop. So we'll work something that we call Instem. It's an Instem variation. We're talking about off inside leverage, okay, in this specific scenario. But anytime we'd work something in our stem, hezzy, stab, he's got off inside leverage, we're going to go stab him and press him vertical, whatever it may be. We need to see a positive change in body language out of whatever it is in stem to get the cover defender turned to run. So we'll do this with our top of route stuff too. You see Kenyon here, he's working like some type of hezzy power skip. But then the key here is watch him change his body language to accelerate before he drops. So another red light, green light variation. And then just some application like route examples. Keenan Allen. Hezzy, attack, drop. We want this change in body language. And while it's not really the best way to accelerate, to dump your chest forward, right? That's not the proper acceleration mechanics. We just need to look fast, right? Like DBs are the best DBs in the world are the best guys in the world at perceiving body language. They're quite literally taught to stare at a human being and pick up any change in their body language to direct them to break on the ball. So we want to positively change the body language and attack out of whatever we're hitting in stem. Hezzy, attack. Aggressive, 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 down. Same thing from Devontae. And then a couple of our guys later in the clip. Well, here's some good ROA from one of the tight ends we work with. He's running digs. The last one here is going to be a good example of what we just spoke about. So this upcoming rep here, hezzy, attack, down. Right? That aggressive change in body language. Tempo, twitch. Is going to heat the DB up, make him flip and chase. And then everything we spoke about in hard breaks comes to fruition at the top. So we'll drill that change in body language by putting it in the red light, green light call. So they'll just get a go call and they'll attack out of it and then they'll get their drop call. So this is new. I'm not sure if we spoke about this at BAFCA. So this is a red light, green light series. Okay. This is really, really helpful for guys to feel the rotation in the break point. we'll start at a 180 and work down to a 90, and we'll explain why. So this is just red light, green light with that rotation in the break. We prefer to execute this drill down a line because if we're doing it properly in our 180, we should work right back down our line, straight down our line. On the drop call, we're now going to rotate to the specified direction. Ankle, body to the reception area. So first variation is straight up 180 hold. So they're going to attack regular red light, green light, but now they're going to rotate their body into the specified direction. Hold the body position. We want them to feel their drive foot loaded, their drive hip loaded. Hold it. It's great to get them to marry it. Go call, drive downhill to a catch. Next variation, no hold. So now it just becomes basically the top of a vertical curl. And this is super beneficial to sequence it this way because if they're able to get out of a vertical curl, the hardest break in football, working straight down your stem, we regress it this way for a reason. Once they hit a couple vertical curl, 180, no hold, 180 holds. When we progress to the 45, it simply feels like you're running through your break because you just did 180, 180, 180. This angle feels like nothing. So let's fast forward to the 45. So now this becomes 45. That's your curl comeback. That's your curl comeback. It's your curl comeback. Little round for me at the top on that one. And then we'll finish with the 90. 90 should feel like you're not even breaking. 90 should feel like you're running through. Because if you remember where we started, nothing changes about our body position. The angle of departure changes. The degree of difficulty changes. So we started vertical, back down our stem. We're finishing vertical, 90. Significantly easier. So long as you approach the break in the same manner. Routes change, breaks stay the same. A hard break is a hard break. If you can run a 180 or vertical curl, you can run a comeback, you can run a dig. So examples, vertical curl here. Drop, rotate, body's completely turned. Early eyes, not a fan of early eyes. We'll let that play full speed. Vertical, 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 drop, rotate, run. Vertical, 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 drop, rotate, run. He's in a position to run out of his break. Shaves it down very, very nicely. The angle of departure is fantastic here. Vertical, 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 drop. Coach, you wanted to hold questions till the end?
Like whenever you want, wherever you're
Yeah,
comfortable.
I feel like it might be a little better to take them as we're going over stuff. If we have any questions right now.
Guys, just go ahead and one at a time. But if you put your hands up, I'll call you out. If there's any questions. I think we're good right now, Coach.
Coach Tate, you got a question?
Yes, sir. I've got a couple.
Right.
So on your on a dig route, do you coach a hard break?
Okay, great. Oh, fantastic question. 90s, ideally 90s, we're rolling everything.
Okay.
Like in a perfect world, we never sink our hips, right? Because it's slow.
Right. Yeah.
The route will dictate, you can't get out of a curl without breaking, without sinking. 90s, we'd ideally like to speed cut everything. Okay. Sometimes scheme will change. Like you got a dagger concept on the right side of the formation, on the right post. Field's a little reduced. If we speed cut the dig and the seam might get a little tight, right?
Yeah.
That might lock in a hard break. if I outside release on a dig route, I'm not gonna be able to speed cut, right? I'm gonna have to snap that thing, trigger that thing down to slip underneath them, possible throw by, right? So
Okay.
things like that will dictate it. But ideally, we're rolling everything on 90s, unless the scheme or the cover defender leverage at the top of the break changes that. But
Okay.
world, we want to roll like speed is king, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
the less time we could be in the break, the better. But that's more so, does the scheme lock us into a hard break or not? Does the
Okay.
is the cover defender locking us, taking the speed cut away, essentially?
Okay. That makes sense.
Yep. And anything else?
The other observation I had on the first video that you showed, your receiver turned inside when he made his break and then rolled out.
Was it a hinge, a fallout? Yeah. Was it the Jerry Rice clip?
I can't remember which one it was now.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a hinge.
He turns inside. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So hinge is a curl break because you're falling out of it, right? It's a similar reception area to a comeback, but a hinge is I'm opening up away from the DB.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I were to rotate this way, I'd have to open my hip all the way back around. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Now, if it was a comeback reception area, we would absolutely drop, rotate, drive. But a hinge is we're opening up towards the ball.
Okay.
Falling out of it. So we teach a hinge. It's literally a curl break point, but instead of driving, we're falling out. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. Thank you.
It's like a anomaly. It's an outlier.
Yeah.
To the rule.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anything else, Coach?
No, that's it. There's no other hands up at the moment, unless there's somebody else jump in. Otherwise, carry on, Coach.
Awesome. All right, so we'll progress to the top of the route. All right, so this is the last thing we got for hard breaks. So we're very, very, very specific in how we teach the top of the route. There's no just running straight and dancing around cones, because when you work top of the route, it's a reduced stem, right? Like you're not running the full depth of the route, so you can get away with things in the top that you will not be able to get away with in the full route because you're at a lesser speed entering the break. So reduced time in the stem, you're at less time to accelerate. So we'll use cones to set the hallway for guys to run downhill. We really don't want the ball to get to them until they clear the final cone to ensure that they're running out of the break. Similarly to red light, green light, we're not worried about what foot they drop on or how many steps they're taking. We're worried about the body position, how the feet strike, what foot they're driving off of. Are they rotating? Are they marrying the break? Once they start getting really comfortable and more efficient in their break point, they will inevitably take less steps. Telling a kid who came his third time to get out in a 15-yard curl in 3 steps is like the kid turning around and telling me, okay, Coach Mike, run a 4.340. Like, it's great. I would love to do it, but I'm not there yet, right? Well, 4.340, I'll never be there. But conceptually, it's the same thing. They're not going to take more steps than they need to take. Okay, it's our job to put them through the proper drills to become more efficient in their break, to become more efficient in how they strike the ground, to be able to get out in less steps. So variations, we have 45, 90, and Instem, similarly to red light, green light. So vertical, drop, rotate, run. I'd like the ball to be out a little later. He's a little, he struggles to throw. That's why he's standing so close. So we'll actually tell guys that we want them to change what foot is up at the line of scrimmage every rep, or maybe we'll go 3 with the inside, 3 with the right foot up, 3 with the left foot up. The only reason is if it takes Nolan 3 steps to trigger with when he has his right foot up, every time he's going to trigger on his left foot. You can't trigger on your left foot every single route. So we want guys to get used to triggering on either foot. We want guys to get used to feeling different foot cadences in the break. So when you switch your feet up, it should just change what foot you trigger on theoretically. So if you notice, we're in very similar body positions that we'd be in at 15 yards. These guys can all get out of this in a completely different body position because they're literally taking 3 strides and breaking downhill. But that defeats the purpose of the drill. This is not, the goal here is not to get out of this in as little time as possible right now. Because the solution to get down this hallway or through this reception area or out of this break at 4 yards is completely different than if we were getting out at 15. But we're training the ability to get out at 15, so the body position should mimic that, if that makes sense. I know it's a little wordy. So here you see Cole flips his feet up. It ends up being a 4-step cadence. Just changes what foot he triggers on because they're triggering on their 3rd step due to the drill, the distance of between the cones. And we'll tell guys all the time, like, it's a constant reminder that you're not running a drill. Like, we don't run the drill. You're running a comeback. Like, mentally in your head right now, we are enforcing that you are running in your head. You are running a comeback. Although you have cones, we're not on the position of a field that you're running a comeback. The body position has to mimic that. There are a lot of people out there that are adamant about telling 16-year-old kids they have to get out of breaks in 3 steps. This is arguably the best route runner to maybe walk the planet. Definitely arguably the best route runner on the planet right now. I've seen him get out in 3. I've seen him get out in 4. And in this case, I've seen him get out in 5. The commonality between the elite route runners is not the number of steps. The commonality is how they attack and their body positions in the break point, how their feet strike the ground. It's not the number of steps. Vertical, 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 down. Rashad Bateman, he's working like a sluggo stem here, but the break point is the break point. Vertical, drop. Awesome job with the body language here as well, right? Watch him change once he comes out of this pressure step to the sluggo. See if we could slow it down if it cleans up the picture for you. Body language change right there. Pressure step, there it is. Head drops, I'm accelerating. Make him chase you. So we did 45s. This is just same thing with 90s. And then next clip, he switches his feet, becomes a different cadence. Hips down, chest over, arms tight. Run out. Run out. Vertical, vertical, drop, rotate, run out. Shave it negative. Really nice job shaving this negative. All right, so now we'll work top of route with something in stem, similarly to red light, green light. So we'll have green cone, orange cone, top of route hallway. This is the last variation we're going over. Okay, so pressure step, change body language, drop. We're training the ability to attack and change body language anytime we're working something in stem. The drill really doesn't change, just the approach does. Be watching Cole here. Hezzy, attack, drop. stab, attack, drop. And then just some more examples of that, and then we're all finished for the day. Hezi, attack, drop. Last clip. Stab, run, drop. Make him chase. Any questions?
Hi,
Very
Coach.
good, Coach. Angelo, go ahead. Coach Angelo.
First of all, it was nice to hear that you had experience in Firenze, in Italy. Because my first coach was the running back of Guelph Firenze in 1998, and this is the reason probably why I'm sitting with all of you guys there. I have a question. It was Raffaele Galuzzi, Raffo.
Okay.
I have a question. So I noticed that very often this kind of moves are very successful when the timing is matching with the change of steps from the DB. So when they move from a back pedal to a cross run, because it's kind of natural separation. But at my level, so what we coaching to the receivers is to try to follow the routes exactly, even counting steps. So I know that it's not that important, but sometimes for the synchronization, for making sure that the quarterback is going to get that player there on the routes, it's extremely important. So how much do you think it's a good advantage to also on the reading system to make sure that that kind of moves happen when the DB changes his body direction on the field?
I think it's hard to dictate, like if he's starting at 12 yards and bailing to 15, just this is devil's advocate, and we have a 10-yard curl, he's never going to flip his hip, right? Like it's more about where is he in relation to our depth. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I don't think the goal for any hard break point before we sink our hips is to get the DB. Let me see if I can pull something up quick. It'll be easier. See, like he's 45 yards off. He should really never flip his hips. But the goal is, let me see what we got here. I want to get him facing the opposite end zone. That's my goal. My goal is to get him his hips and shoulders facing the opposite end zone. There are a lot of different ways to do that. This is a long question to answer. If I'm understanding correctly, you're saying, is it more important to break the route off when that happens versus a certain depth? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, is that what I'm talking about? Yeah.
So the problem there becomes every single time you run the route, it's going to be a different depth. So the answer is it's very important to get him to flip his hips. The solution here is making sure guys understand how to get them to flip their hips. Does that make sense? Like your curl should all essentially hit it around the same depth. Understood? But how I get a guy to turn and run is going to change if he's at 4, if he's at 8, if he's at 10. You know what I mean? So I think you're on the right track, and you don't want to change how you're doing it in regard to do we break our route off when we get the guy to turn and run, because he's going to turn and run at a different depth every single time. So that's not very conducive to any type of offense, especially at that level, because it's not enough time to practice that. I think you want to keep your depth, whatever it is. If you count steps, that's fine. But just try and get the guys to understand how to attack different depths of the DB in order to make them turn and run.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.